I'm Stuart Lilly, Director of Interpretation at Fort Ticonderoga. Now, we do a lot of videos here, and one of our most popular videos has remained the buttonhole video I did way back in the summer of 2011. Now, many of you asked for more information about clothing construction techniques, and we're going to provide that. However, in the interim, what we want to do is go all the way back to buttonholes, because since we did that video, we've been using a greater variety of techniques, and we'd like to take a moment to actually look at some better techniques to do higher quality buttonholes. One of the most important things that we didn't cover in detail in the last video is a lot of the prep work that you need to do a high quality buttonhole. So as we come on down here, we look at, this is a waistcoat front for what's going to be a belted waistcoat for our 1776 portrayal. And it's done some buttonholes already, but looking at how we want to cut these buttonholes, one of the most important things is to use a buttonhole chisel. Now this is a hand-done copy of an original 18th century buttonhole chisel. However, and to be very honest, you can go to any hardware store and buy a normal woodworking chisel and get much the same effect. Now if you're super strong, you can go ahead and just push right through. What I find makes this easier is to go ahead and use a mallet, a couple of quick taps. You should be right through. Now once you cut through, I'm going to take out my marking, my tailor's tacks, and then it's going to sound counterintuitive, but you want to actually go in and whip stitch the edges of your buttonhole together. Now, it's sort of like doing a buttonhole before you do your buttonhole, but on materials like I'm using here, in this case a white broadcloth on the outside, a layer of Osnaburg interfacing between, and then on the inside some linen ticking. That thickness means that it's going to be a lot easier if I know that these edges have been secured together, and the best way to do that is just some quick whip stitching. It's almost like basting, and it's just trying to hold things together. The only difference is I'm going to leave this in place so that it holds everything together, and it'll be concealed inside the buttonhole itself. Now what we tend to use on all of our buttonholes is a silk buttonhole twist. Now it was commonly used on better civilian clothes and certainly all officers' clothing. We tend to use it for enlisted clothing and lower grade clothing because it's not too dissimilar from what was probably more common, which was a worsted buttonhole twist, which unfortunately isn't made anymore. So this makes a pretty good substitute, and to be honest, it produces the best quality period buttonhole. Now when we go to use it, there's a couple tricks, one of which is the amount of length you use. Imagine taking just about the distance of your outstretched arm. That's the perfect amount of thread to have. There's no reason to use any less. The other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to just wax the ends of it so that they tend not to unravel. Now as I go to do the buttonhole, first step is going to be to scoop down into it, catching just a little bit behind the end of the buttonhole itself. Now as I go to stitch, and this is going to be very different from the video, it achieves the exact same result, but we found it to be a little bit easier. I'm going to make a full counterclockwise circle. Having done that, I'm going to both scoop down and come up inside that entire circle. Now as I pull the cord tight, it's achieving the function of wrapping the thread around the needle twice, but it's doing it in one simple motion. Now to do the next one, what's tricky to do about buttonholes is gauging how far you're biting into the edge as well as how far you advance with each stitch. There's no easy way to do this except just to practice, zone out, and just let it happen. So I going around counterclockwise, coming up through each stitch, and you'll notice too, having done the prep work of whip stitching these edges together, now I don't have to worry about catching the lining. It's already being pulled up into the buttonhole stitches as I do them. Now what's essential on this is to keep your thread tension even and to make sure that you bite in the same distance into the edge of the buttonhole and at the same time advancing at the same rate. And it doesn't have to be super close together. You want to stitch at about, I'd say 12 to 14 stitches per inch. For most common work, that's about what you're looking for. Alright, so as we're coming to the end of the buttonhole here, you'll notice that it's going to get a little tricky to get all the way in there. as you to scoop through in one motion. So you're still making that big loop, but just come down and up. So stitch down and then push the needle right on up. It allows you to get right on into there, especially with thicker fabrics like this. And what's important now is to set in the bar tack. And unlike 19th century buttonholes where they will oftentimes go around this edge with a buttonhole stitch, in the 18th century they do both ends with a bar tack. And to do that, to finish my last stitch, now I'm just going to scoop through. And with this nice heavy buttonhole twist, I only really need about 2 or 3 stitches here. There's 1. There's 2. And now you can do this with either a blanket stitch, like I'm going to use here, or with similar buttonhole stitch. But you're just going to cover this. Just go through the loop that you make, cover over those 3 threads you've created. And the whole thing wants to be relatively narrow. There's no prize for having wide buttonholes at this time. In fact, the most fashionable ones are about as narrow as you could make them. Now, having gone to the end with that stitching, I'm going to go down through the end of the bar tack, turn the whole thing around, bring the needle up right at the very start of that buttonhole, bring all of my thread up, and now I'm ready to go ahead and start that buttonhole stitching again. Alright, same basic process. We're almost to the end on this one here. And you want to go just a little bit past where the actual opening is. That's what gives you the stronger buttonhole. And it wasn't, there's many buttonholes back then that were oftentimes worked quite a bit further. One thing you may find on silk buttonhole twist is it wants to untwist as you work. So periodically just twist it counterclockwise, and you'll find it much easier to work with. And do one last stitch here, pull up through it, and now I'm going to do one more bar tack, securing the back of the buttonhole. Alright, last one, and now I'm going to take the end of the thread, tuck it down through, and try to work my way through something dense, like the interfacing I've got in here. Pull that tight, push the bar tack nice and even, snip the tail off, and voila, we've got another buttonhole. Now, ideally do enough of these and they'll all start looking like one another, and it should go pretty fast. So it's like I only got 4 more to do. So anyway, over the next few weeks and months we're going to keep looking at various tailoring techniques. So stay tuned. We're going to keep checking out cool ways to do garments. So thank you.